Crimson Desert is launching very soon, and the hype around this game is reaching an all-time high, and it is building rapidly these past few months, as is evident on various social media platforms. Just take a look at Google Trends for these past few months. As we see here, there is building hype that has been going on ever since the start of this year, ever since January 8th. It has been slowly building up, especially these past few weeks, and has reached an all-time high around this game's release that is set to be in the next few days, actually. This game is being developed by Pywell, the same studio behind Black Desert Online. Compared to that title, Crimson Desert is shaping up to be a massive single-player open-world action adventure. And unlike its counterpart Black Desert Online, this isn't an MMO. Instead, it's a story-driven open-world experience with a much heavier focus on exploration, combat, and sandbox systems that allows players to approach situations in different ways. The game is set to release on the 19th of March, so very soon as of recording this. It's releasing globally on PC, that is Steam, Epic Game Store, and even on Mac computers, which is a surprising release platform to do it on, as Mac and by extension Apple isn't really known for their gaming hardware. But nevertheless, it's also releasing on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. The game reportedly went gold back in January of 2026 and is expected to have a install size of around 150 gigabytes, suggesting that this is a very large game. Crimson Desert takes place on a continent known as Pywell, a massive, seamless open world that developers estimate to be around 80 to 110 square kilometers, or about 30 to 42 square miles for the Americans watching this. And according to Pyrlabis, the world is designed to be larger than games such as Skyrim and even Red Dead Redemption 2, and it aims to feel alive and reactive to the player as well. Very much a dynamic experience. The world features dynamic weather systems, a day-night cycle, and interactive environments that can influence gameplay. The past month or so, Pyrlabis has really stepped into overdrive on the marketing, and they've even revealed that Pywell itself is divided into 5 main regions, each representing a different culture, story, and as well as an environment. These worlds are consisting of one that is known as Fernand, the starting region of the game where players begin their journey. It also contains a region called Payloon, which is home of the Greymanes faction that the protagonist Cliff Macduff belongs to. There's the Lemonis region, a political and military center of the world where much of the larger power struggles of Pywell seemingly will unfold in. There is the Delicia, a region focused on research, scholarship, and technological advancements in general. And lastly, the Crimson Desert, the harsh desert region that gives the game its title, an arid landscape filled with dunes, red sands, danger, and lawlessness. Syllabus has even said that each zone is set to feature its own cities, quests, puzzles, secrets, bosses, and environmental storytelling, making exploration a major part of the experience. Rumors also suggest that the game may feature over 70 different kinds of bosses scattered around the world, though that number has not been officially confirmed, but we'll have to see when the game releases. While Crimson Desert places a strong emphasis on exploration and gameplay systems, there is still an underlying narrative running throughout the world of Pywell. Story follows Cliff, the leader of the Greymanes mercenary group, as he navigates a world filled with political tension, shifting alliances, regional conflicts, and signs of unrest. Rather than presenting a strictly linear narrative, the story seems to be woven into the world itself, where Pearl Abyss has focused on the type of storytelling that happens through interactions with places such as different faction, conflict, regional struggles, and character-driven events. There's different parts of Pywell that are influenced by these competing powers, and as players explore the world, they will gradually encounter the broader political landscape that shapes this environment and continent as a whole. This approach also suggests that the story may unfold more naturally through exploration and encounters rather than being delivered purely through traditional quest chains, cutscenes, or extensive amounts of text such as various collectibles. Now, as was revealed in the marketing material these past few months, Cliff is the main protagonist of this game, but Crimson Desert actually allows players to control multiple different characters at different points in the story. However, this isn't a traditional class system or free character selection. Instead, the characters seem to become playable at specific story moments while you're playing the game, and currently Currently, the three confirmed playable characters include Cliff, as mentioned earlier. He is the main protagonist and leader of the Greymane's mercenary group. His playstyle is being described as a balanced approach combining melee combat with the use of systems called Axiom Force, which allows players to control and manipulate environmental stuff that you find in the world, similar to mechanics seen in games such as Breath of the Wild. There is Damien, a fast and agile warrior who mixes magic, great swords, and firearms, offering a more technical and glass cannon playstyle to the player. And lastly, there is Unga, an orc-like barbarian with a much heavier playstyle, using great axes, arm cannons, and mining tools to interact with the world and deliver devastating attacks. Now, with these different characters, one of the main questions that pops up is there any customization available? And the customization seems to be somewhat limited. Players can adjust things like their hair, tattoos, and war paint, but it seems like we aren't allowed to fundamentally change the core appearance of different characters. So whether you like that or not, we are stuck with the three different characters that we've seen in marketing material. Maybe there is more, but I highly doubt it, since these characters were featured in an overview video released some time ago. One of the more interesting design decisions in Crimson Desert is that the game does not use a traditional leveling system. Instead of gaining experience and leveling up over time, as is normal with a lot of these different games, progression is primarily tied to exploration and discovery within the world, which is an interesting concept to take on. I can imagine that some players might be turned off by this, as a traditional leveling system could definitely streamline the experience. I'm welcome to the change of maybe doing things in an untraditional way of leveling the character through exploration and picking the right equipment for boss fights or encounters that you may seem to stumble upon during your discoveries. In terms of core gameplay loop, the system revolves around several interconnected systems. There is the combat, and the combat seems fast, it seems brutal, and it's leaning towards the more physical side. Developers describe the combat as visceral and full of possibilities, with the players able to use environmental interactions such as different grappling systems, mounted combat, and destructible elements during their different battles. There's also horseback combat and large-scale fights that seem to be a very major part of this experience. There's also different environmental interactions, and another area where Crimson Desert appears to stand out is its focus on how it interacts with the environment. Many of the gameplay demonstrations have shown that the world itself plays an active role during combat and traversal as well. Players can interact with objects in the environment, destroy structures, and use terrain to their advantage during encounters. And in several gameplay clips, characters have been shown knocking enemies into obstacles, collapsing structures, or using the environment itself as part of their combat strategy. And these interactions extend beyond combat as well. There's the environmental physics that allow players to manipulate objects, break structures, and create dynamic situations that make encounters feel less scripted and more reactive to the player's actions. But in addition to smaller encounters and exploration, Crimson Desert also features more large-scale battles that take place across parts of the open world. Some of the gameplay showcases have shown scenes involving fortress sieges, cavalry charges, and large groups of soldiers fighting across open battlefields. Now, these moments appear to be designed to create a sense of scale and spectacle, with large numbers of characters participating in chaotic battles that go far beyond the standard one-on-one combat that you might see on other games, and less taxing on the engine as well. So that might be why they're showcasing these larger battles, to showcase how impressive their engine actually is and how impressive it is that it can handle these different actions and battles that take place. Now, these large encounters help reinforce the idea that Pywell is a world shaped by conflict, where the actions of different factions and armies can influence events unfolding around the player as you play through the game. Now, exploration, as previously alluded to, seems to be at the heart of Crimson Desert. Much of the player's time will likely be spent on simply discovering and seeing what the world has to offer. Now, this can range from hidden passages and secret areas scattered around the landscape to solving environmental puzzles and overcoming platforming challenges. Along the way, players might even encounter powerful bosses and uncover collectible artifacts that contribute to the player's progression. And rather than directing players down a single linear path, path, the game seems to be designed to encourage curiosity and experimentation, rewarding those who take the time to explore its world more deeply. Now, beyond combat and exploration, Crimson Desert also includes a number of sandbox-style systems that allow players to interact with the world in various different ways. Activities such as hunting, fishing, cooking, and gathering resources play a role in the overall gameplay loop. Players can also craft equipment and manage resources while engaging with smaller systems like arm wrestling and other interactive activities scattered around the world. In addition to this, the game appears to include elements of base or camp management, allowing players to build farms or ranches and even send companions out on missions. And these systems help make the world more alive and give players additional ways to engage with it outside of combat. And this system, I imagine, comes straight from Black Desert Online, as you're able to engage with such management systems that allows you to direct subordinates, if you will, to various resource nodes. Now, through your exploration, you can decide to do it on your feet, but there's also other ways to explore it, and traversal across the world of Pywell also appears to be extremely varied. Players won't be limited to simple traveling on foot, but the game reportedly includes a variety of different mounts, and these include more traditional options such as horses, but it also includes much more unusual ones like bears and dragons, and even giant mechanical mounts equipped with weapons such as mechs or some kind of more mechanical beings. Now, this kind of variety is intended to make movement across the world feel much more dynamic and adventurous, while also reinforcing the scale of this open world. Now, speaking of open world, going back to it a bit, if you're expecting Crimson Desert to be a very narrative heavy experience, it might not exactly be what you're looking for, because developers have been fairly open about this point. While there is an underlying story running throughout the game, the primary focus appears to be the freedom of exploration and discovery. Instead of simply following quests from one location to another, players are actually encouraged to explore the world at their own pace, and this means discovering hidden locations, finding a rare weapon and upgrades along the way, and experimenting with different combat builds, solving environmental puzzles, and uncovering secrets scattered throughout the world. This very much leans into the idea that players approach challenges in their own way, creating their own path through the game rather than following a strictly predefined route that the developers have set for the players. And throughout several gameplay showcases, Pyrlobus has repeatedly demonstrated just how expansive their world actually is of Pywell, and players are often shown standing on high vantage points where they can see enormous landscapes stretching far into the distance. And from these elevated viewpoints, the world naturally breaks into different regions, and each with their own different environment and visual identity. And I mentioned them earlier in this video, and this really brings in the argument by Pyrlobus that it reinforces the idea that Crimson Desert is built as a seamless open world rather than a series of separated maps. And I do have a quick video that I want to point to where you can actually see how the game is divided into these different regions. Now we see here that I have a still image of the video by PlayStation. It was released some time ago now, and this is a quick bird's eye perspective of the world where you can see the Crimson Desert as we're flying into it right here with the arid landscape. We can see other regions with much more greener foliage and a much more lush environment. You can see this centerpiece here seem to be a more cold and desolate area with a giant tower sticking out of it. And I imagine it's one of the region mentioned before, maybe the Demonis region, as it is the political and military center of the world. Now, I don't know to what degree we have to take that literally, but it could be that this giant tower could function as the literal center of Pywell. Now, if we look at this from a more technical standpoint, Crimson Desert is powered by Pyrlobus's proprietary Black Space engine, which the studio has developed specifically for large-scale open-world systems such as this. The engine supports native 4K resolution and aims to deliver performance targets around the 60 frames per second natively without any upscalers, and it also seems to include full ray tracing technology with features such as global illumination and realistic reflections designed to enhance the visual visual presentation of the game. And if you're interested in these sorts of technical stuff, then I highly recommend you checking out the video done by Digital Foundry that was just released a few days ago, I believe, as they have done an extensive review on how this game performs, and as well as they offer their own opinions on whether it does a great job at utilizing the resources that it has. And I do highly recommend you check it out if you're interested in these sorts of things. However, beyond visuals, the world itself is built to be highly interactive and partially indestructible, allowing environmental elements to play a role in both combat and exploration. Now, this should help make encounters feel more dynamic and give players additional ways to interact with the world around them. And a large part of what makes these interactions possible comes from the technology behind the game, where Perlibis has highlighted that Crimson Desert seems to make extensive use of physics-based interactions and advanced animation systems where characters react dynamically to impact, knockback, and environmental collisions. Enemies seem to be able to be thrown, pushed, or knocked into objects around them, creating moments where combat feels less rigid and are more physically reactive to the players and environment. And combined with environmental destruction and interactive terrain, these systems are meant to create combat scenarios that feel unpredictable and varied rather than just repetitive. Now, as the game is releasing as a single player experience, many have questioned whether or not this game will include any kind of multiplayer functionalities or co-op experiences. And the developers have said that the game is designed as a single player experience, and they have been very clear that the game is not intended to function as an MMO like Black Desert Online. However, an interesting detail is that Perlibis originally developed this Black Space engine with the possibility of multiplayer or a cooperative gameplay system in mind when they started working on Crimson Desert, especially at the beginning. But during development, the studio ultimately decided to focus on creating a more refined single-player experience instead. But that being said, Perlibis has not completely ruled out the possibility that some form of co-op or multiplayer functionality could appear in the future. But for now, though, the game is being positioned as a standalone single-player adventure. The developers has also clarified that Crimson Desert is not intended to be a Souls-like difficulty experience. Instead, they seem to describe it as something players can naturally manage through exploration and upgrades. The idea is that if players explore, gather resources, and improve their equipment, they can make encounters significantly easier. And at launch, the developers has also indicated that they will not include a traditional difficulty setting, or where they're emphasizing that players need to source their equipment, weapons, abilities, and general progression resources to be able to progress in this game. But overall, Crimson Desert seems to be built around the idea of giving players a massive world and allowing them to approach it however they want to approach it in. Developers often describe the philosophy of the game with phrases such as reclaim power and reach beyond and forge your own way. The idea is that there isn't a single correct way to approach the game's challenges. Instead, the game provides systems that allows players to experiment with different strategies and playstyles, making it a somewhat untraditional experience, but at the same time not a completely new one. With that being said, Crimson Desert is actually shaping up to be an extremely ambitious open world project, and rather than focusing purely on narrative, the game prioritizes exploration and experimentation and player freedom. And between its large, seamless world, unique combat systems, and exploration-driven progression, the game could end up offering a very different experience compared to more traditional open-world RPGs. But as with any game of this scale, the real test comes once players will get their hands on it. If Perlibis can successfully deliver on the world that they've been showcasing, Crimson Desert could very well become one of the most interesting open-world games of the year, and a strong contender for Game of the Year, even. That is, if GTA 6 is actually releasing this year. But anyway, that's gonna do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the game. Are you interested in it? Are you gonna be playing it on release? Are you gonna be waiting for a sale of the game? Are you just not interested at all in this game? Let me know why in the comments for any of these things. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. Take care, everyone.